Protecting Africa's elephants is also on the agenda during President Obama's trip to Kenya. The nation remains an important battlefield in the war against organized wildlife poaching. The U.S. is stepping up its global efforts by closely working with key countries and providing them with more law enforcement and high-tech tools. We get more from VOA's John Walker in Washington.
A situation room of sorts on wildlife poaching, a review of the wins, the losses, and where to go next. Conflict, poaching, and a seemingly insatiable thirst for ivory. The experts agree time is running out for Africa's elephants.
And so it was these data sets that were pulled together that actually showed us what was going on the ground. And next slide, it showed that we actually had a 76% decline in elephant populations over the last decade.
While public education campaigns have reduced ivory demand, especially in China and Southeast Asia, poaching remains a cash maker for terror groups operating in Africa. U.S. Representative Ed Royce is chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and a sponsor of the Global Anti-Poaching Act.
We're what put that heavy price, the purchase of these products, that put the profits into the hands of who? Into groups like the Lord's Resistance Army, into terrorist networks that are now stretching across Africa, like AlShabaab. And so we need new tools.
Journalist Brian Christie's investigations for National Geographic magazine help expose the horrors of poaching and the human costs involved.
Yeah, the chairman's legislation is really extraordinary. It's taking what people have been talking about for quite some time, taking wildlife crime, and elevating it to the sorts of crime that we abhor generally. Human trafficking, drug trafficking, it's on par with that. It's really a fantastic step forward.
All of this is taking place at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. The center brings together experts to share knowledge and advise policymakers. Dan Ash is the director of U.S. Fish and Wildlife. After a recent trip to Tanzania, he decided to put more resources on the front lines.
So what we're doing worldwide is we're putting law enforcement liaisons, our special agents, our undercover investigative agents into U.S. embassies across the world. So by the end of this year, we'll have agents in China, in Vietnam, in Tanzania, in Botswana, and in Lima, Peru, to work with wildlife enforcement networks across the world and target our law enforcement efforts.
And in Kenya, local leaders are developing programs to lift villagers out of poverty so they can resist the easy money offered by poachers.
One of the reasons we came here was to discuss poaching and anti-poaching and security in Africa. And my part of the world is prone to poaching. Luckily, the communities that live immediately next to these parks are not by nature poachers, they are pastoralists. And we are trying our best since we came in as a county government to improve their ways of life, give them necessary infrastructure, look at their health, education for their children, look for some employment for them, and also make them feel that this wildlife is there for them.
How do you make a live rhino worth more than a dead rhino? Think big.
For Africa 54, I'm John Walker, VOA News.